Okay.
Well, welcome everyone to our weekly session of Tertunos. As is our custom, we first orient ourselves to see where we are in the general scheme of the book, and then we'll get to the class. The Ramchal first explained that there's a give and take, a debating process going on in the Gemara, an evaluation of statements consisting of questions and answers and kashas and terutzim and proofs and disproofs. And we went through the various subcategories of that masamatan. He says, however, that really, if you investigate things deeply, you'll find that all the masamatan can be broken down into a few pulos haseichel, a few logical moves that the mind already has built in to evaluate and understand statements. What are those three moves? The first thing is that one has to evaluate what's being said in the form of a statement. What statement is being presented? That's called Havanas HaMamari. After we understand statements and its parts, we'll build with statements syllogisms. And finally, we'll be proving and disproving syllogisms and propositions. So basically, we're going to narrow things down to propositions or statements and their syllogisms and proofs. Today, Be'ezus Hashem, will finish the first section of Pulos HaSeichel, and that's Havanas HaMamari. That's where we're holding today. In this little section over here, Havanas HaMamari. Now, we've discussed in Havanas HaMamari that there's different types of statements, the minim mamari, and we said that statements, first of all, can be broken down into statements that are understood in their simple meaning, pashtus, and then there's statements that are used in using analogies or exaggerations. So we want to understand basically that every statement, no matter what form it's in, is going to have a subject, something that it's speaking about, and it's going to have something that it's saying about that subject. We call that a no-say and a no-su. And we discussed that subjects come in three different sizes: generals, all statements, particular statements, like Yerushalayim is not Matama, B'negoyim, and then there's Katsasi, some statements. We said predicates come in 11 sizes: the simple statement, the limited statement, and so on and so on, the exceptional statement. After we understood the forms of subjects and predicates, we went on to show what is the statement saying and what must be true if the statement is true. That was called the Amitis Hamamarim. What are the Sod Gezerah, the final bottom line of the statement that will be needed either to prove the statement true or prove the statement false. Then we went on to evaluating the similarities and differences between two statements. We took two statements, and the Ramchal went through evaluating their relationship, either they're different words and saying the same thing, they're both domim, or they share the same common subjects or predicates, or they're opposites, or they're Navdalim have really nothing to do with each other at all. Contrapositives also. So that was a discussion of statements and relationships to each other. Now we're going to go and discuss the last section in statements, and that's called diukim or inferences. The Ramchal is going to tell us that certain inferences are bilti mukhrach, they're not absolutely true, and certain diukim will be absolutely true because they're built on the internal aspect of the statement. And he'll be giving a list of those mukhrach diukim, and that's what we'll be doing for our work today. So let's get to the text of Derek Funos. I'll turn it on for you. There we go. And we'll shut off these little markers. Very good. Chapter 5. Hine adhena debarnu mima shemitzar b'sichleinu min ha'mamarim shenikra o nishma. Up to this point, we've explained what we can understand from a statement that is either written or spoken or someone said it. Omnam o nichakek b'tivenu lisbonenu tocha nishma ma shelo nishma. We also have a logical process in our mind which can go from the black and white statement of what it says to what it infers, which is things that it doesn't say in black and white, but must be there through implication. Because this inference is absolutely understood with the black and white statement that is stated. For instance, Derek Mashal. Kashamu Torah, Zos Achaya Asher Tachelu. The Torah says, these are the animals that you may eat. Hine, Hamamar Hazenavim Tachila, Kafi Havanas Milasav Elu, She'elu Haminim Hamuskarim B'Pasha Mutar Lonu Le'Cholosam. The first thing is what the Pasha says, and that's what we understand it first, in the basic meaning of the words, that all the different types that are going to, of animals mentioned in this Pasha are going to be permitted to eat. These are the ones that will be permitted to eat. Omnam, however, but we can understand that it's impossible that for the first statement to exist without understanding the next piece, that all the other minim, all the other different types of animals that are outside the list in this parsha, they will not be permitted to eat. So even though it's not stated in black and white, the very fact that the word zos hachaya, these are the ones that are permitted, makes us infer that any ones outside that list will not be permitted. When we said in Shmuel, these were the last words of David HaMelech. Nisponem Mizeh, the Gemara in Moed Katan says, Miklal v'ik rishonim. Since it used the word, the last words, so they must have been previous words, first words. Ki efshar lahavin acharon b'li rishon. It's impossible to understand the word acharon, after, last, without understanding there must be ones before it. So those are inferences, linguistic influences, that makes us understand statements that are not physically in black and white, but are there per force according to the words used. Ulam kol ma she'anu mevinim mitov ma'amar echad v'lo perish bo nikra diuk. The Ramchal tells us that everything that we can understand from a statement, that it's not written there in black and white and meforish, that's called a diuk. And now I'll explain the various rules. Hine, kol mamash yom haroish yishmeru kol milosav ha'erech b'shiur ha're'ui lahem. It's a rule of proper speech that when you make a statement, you should be very careful in your words to give the proper extent and distribution that's fitting to those words. What does that mean? Perish. Shelo yuchad nosu l'nosei echad im hu re'ui l'rabin. you shouldn't make a statement that says that there's one predicate exists in one subject when really that predicate exists in three subjects. V'lo ye'omer v'nosuim rabim nasu she'einu raui ela le'echad mihem. Alternatively, it's not fitting to say a statement that one predicate is applicable to three subjects when in reality that predicate is only applicable to one of the three. So the first rule of diktuk lashon here is that we have to be very, very precise with our statement and make sure that when we're predicating something to a subject, it's exactly the amount of subjects that it fits, no less and no more. וכן על דרך זה לא תיוחד לנושא נושא אחד אם ראוי לו יותר. Also, we shouldn't say that one subject has a specific predicate when really that subject has three predicates and not one. ולא יאמר בנושא נשואים רבים אם אין ראוי לו אלא אחד מהם. And similarly, we shouldn't say that a certain subject has three predicates when really it only has one. So mitzad the noseh, mitzad the subject and the predicate, everything we say should be totally exacting. And that's the reason why we can make inferences, because we said the people that we're at least dealing with, the Talmidei Chachamim, are very, very careful with their language. V'hinei al pi hashorosh hazeh, based on this principle of exactitude, keshizdamnei lifneinu maman in a mamarim, when we hear a statement, yavit sichlenu el chalakav, you should look at the parts, subjects and predicates and the kesher, the el shirab, but you have to look also at the amount that's being spoken about in the subject or the predicate. And according to what we find there in the statement, the size of the subject, the size of the predicate, and the relationship of the parts, that will be the tziyur, the image, that we receive from them. We've spoken about the word-thought formula. A person has a concept, he closes it in words, and those words should be very fitting for me or the listener to reconstruct exactly the meaning of those words. Any sloppiness or imprecise use of language is going to cause a resultant confusion in the ears of the listener. And anything that's outside the limitations of the words used in the statement, rightfully, yidon, yos, nitchel, we should say it does not exist. In other words, the statement, if the statement is talking about one subject, then all of the subjects are out. If it's talking about one predicate with the subject, and all of the predicates are out. Derech mashal. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Hatzad Tzipor L'Migdal, Utzvi L'Bayis Chayev. A person on Shabbos, if he traps a bird in a tower or a deer in a house, he's Chayev. L'Dikul B'Shas. So the Shas makes a diuk. L'Bayis, Hu D'Machayev. Aval L'Bivarin, Lo. The Shas makes a diuk that says, in a house you'd be chayev, but something larger than a house, a corral, for instance, then you should be pater. Yisod hadiyuku, what's the foundation of a diuk, of this diuk? Ki hine yached Rabbi Yehuda hachiv el hanose hamupal shel tzad tzvi l'bayis. The foundation of this inference is based on the fact that Rabbi Yehuda limited his subject to trapping in a house. And it's fitting that we judge from his words. Excuse me. it's fitting to say anything that's outside of that subject that he limited, lo yeheba nasu zeh. It should not have that predicate of being chayev, perish. Mi shelo yeh tzad l'bayis, hafal pi sheyeh tzad. A person who does not capture a house, even though he captures an animal in a larger place, lo yeh chayev, he should not be chayev. Ki ilu hayasad dato sheyeh hachiyuv al kol tzad berechlet, because if the chiyuv was not limited, it was really unlimited, then lo hayamaski b'nosei hatzad ha'gvul. Then Rabbi Yehuda would not have limited his subject with the limitation of bias, the hainu hatzad the bias. V'chein kol kiyotzi b'zeh. So too in all similar cases. So and this is the foundation. It's brought in Dr. Gemara as one of his first rules is dikduk halashon, that people, when they speak Talmidei Chachamim, are very, very precise in the language they use, and therefore whatever limitations they placed on the subject or the predicate will indicate to us that things outside those borders will have a different law. That's the introduction, and that's the very basic reason why we can infer things, because Talmidei Chachamim speak dafka. However, we have to explain. You should know that there's two types of diyukim. The first type is called mukhrach. They're absolutely necessary. And the second type is called bilti mukhrach, unnecessary. What we call lav dafka. We'll see. What are the bilti mukhrach? Hu talui b'dikduk seder milos v'yachasan. The bilti mukhrach ones depend upon the way that the words are organized or a certain relationship that the words have. Okay. For instance, we said that the use of the word achron is a milah yachasi. Achron implies rishon. We've been studying, for our example, the Arba Avos Nezikin. The word avos, a av, and abba implies a tolda. So those are all linguistic inferences. They depend upon the specific words being used, or also the seder of how the words are used. We said that there's the shor, mab, and heber, and there's all sorts of diyukim exactly why that seder was picked. Is it because that's the way they were presented in the Chumash, or is it because of the way that the words sound together, the shor and the bor, the mab, and the heber? But a lot of people are medayek about the seder in which the information was presented. So all those diyukim he calls bilti mukhrach. Why? Even though they flag or they indicate at first that we should make these diyukim, we can possibly find a reason to agree with the statement and disagree with the inference. Let's give an example. Derech mashal. Keshishinina, we learned in a Mishnah about saying the bracha on Havdalah. If you're looking over a city and you see most of the city and you see the candles lit after Shabbos. So the statement says in brachas, in Rov Yisrael, if the city has a majority of Jewish people in it, those are the lights you're seeing come from a majority of Jewish homes, so then mevorach. So then the law is that you're allowed to mevorach. The Gemara makes diuk. Hor, Maxel. What happens? It was a city with 50% Jews and 50% non-Jews. So, and in Mavarach, it's a proper deal. The fact that the statement says Rov means Dafka Rov. It has to be 51% Jews in order to Mavarach. 50% Jews already falls out of that limited subject of Rov. That's what the words imply. However, later on, the Gemara says, really, the truth is that even if there were 50% Jews and 50% non-Jews, you still could say the bracha for Havdalah. So then why did the statement use the word rov? Behind the Tana Reisha rov, kusin, Tana Sefer, rov Yisrael. Since the Mishnah in the Reisha used spoke about a din where the truth was rov, it only applied to rov, kusin. So there it continued in the Sefer to say rov Yisrael, even though it wasn't true. So this is a stylistic reason why the Tana did not speak precisely. Again, the first rule is we always presume preciseness. However, we can dochek that diuk, since it wasn't said, it was implied, by showing another reason why the diuk is not true. The statement is true, but not the diuk. Here, in the case of Aresh, we spoke about a din of kusim, where rov is applicable. So the Tana, in order for us to memorize the Mishnayos properly, continued talking about rov Yisrael, even though it was not really shaykh to rov, maksa also. Hine, nitcha hadiuk, b'masha omer, shelo nischaven Tana lahotzi maksa. The diuk was pushed away by saying that Tana did not mean to eliminate the possibility of half-half. Ella, Ram, Shifach, and Aresha, but just to follow the language of the Aresha. So that's why these diukim in the language can be pushed around, because we can find other reasons why we can agree with the original statement. Of course, we have to always agree with the Meforah statement. But the unstated statement can be pushed around for certain external reasons. Now, again, we don't like to do that. Our first position, our preferred position, where we always start, is that the statement is true and the diuk is true. But we may be forced to keep the statement and eliminate the diuk. For instance, the Gemara also later on in Baba Kama gives 11 or 16, a lot of different types of avos, and some of them, like Motzi Shemra, don't have toldos. So where's your, the Gemara asks, avos implies toldos. It gives a new definition of avos. No, avos has another definition called things that are mentioned in the Torah, called av, even if they don't have toldos, which is another way of denying the inference. Okay, so those are called inferences based on the use of language, the seder of language, implications of language. Those implications can be pushed away. What are called muchlach inferences? Hu toli be'etzemama. Now we're not talking about the statement of relationship to other statements in Atu Reisha and Sefer. We're talking about the statement itself. There's certain diukim in a statement. It's impossible to agree with the statement and deny its inference. Why? Because the inference is an integral part of the logical structure of the statement. Here's an example. Let's say we know the statement. Kol man dahavi naki agav imei sapek. Everything that is clean on its mother's back will cause ink to rise. So we're talking about wool on a sheep, and we're saying that clean wool will always absorb ink. That's what the statement says. All clean wolves, all clean wolves that were on the mother sheep, that was sheared from the mother sheep, as long as it was clean there. So ink will absorb salik, will go into that wool nicely. Mukhrach, shenei gamken, should call the low salik, everything that does not absorb, lo havi nakia gavime, was not clean on the mother's back of the sheep. He's now going to explain a whole set of the Mukhrachim and Diyukim. He's going to go through the all statement and the some statement, and he's going to show us all the Mukhrach Diyukim. Let's see how he does it.
Right, so this example that we just finished, he's showing from here that there's no way to come along and say that there's a reason for this diuk not to be a diuk. In other words, he's saying that because it's
not based on, it's not based on stylistic language, it's based on the relationship that this subject internally has with its predicate. Nothing to do with style here. If the first statement is true, the second statement must be true because it's built on form. So let's go through the form a little, and let's see why that's true.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Amnam kol diyukim hamukhrachim hem elu. All the mukhrach diyukim are the following. So the first statement he's going to give is the klali statement, the general statement. Kol mama klali mekayim. A klali mekayim, that means the gezerah is and is. All things are, as opposed to all things are not. So all klali mekayim statements, okay, yidiyuku mimenu shnei diyukim. We are going to make two inferences from them. Here's our example. Derech mashal. Here's my little chart on the bottom, we'll get to it. Kol menakya gavi mei salek. Our first statement said all clean wolves will absorb ink. Yiduyak mimenu. So we'll make the following diyukim. Call the low salik, anything that cannot absorb, lo havi nakia gavi mei, could not be clean on the back of its mother's milk. The nikra zeh chiluk hefli kolel. And it's called the chiluk because we changed the subject and the predicate. It's the hefli because we changed the gezerah from positive, agavi me salik, to negative, the low salik. And we kept it a kolel. So let's see if that's true on our charts. I made a little chart here. Here's the circle. Here's the circle here that talks about all the clean wolves on the mother's back. Okay, that's the blue circle. Now we're saying everything in this circle here, okay, everything in this circle exists within this circle. Okay, called the nakia gavi mei. Everything that's nakia gavi mei must be absorbent. The ink must absorb. Now, what happens if I have things that are non-absorbent, that are outside this box? Okay? So anything outside this box, which is the box of low salik, anything that doesn't absorb, can't possibly be nakia gavi mei. Okay? Is that clear? Let's say all buses have wheels. Just to give a very simple example. All buses have wheels. So it's a kolel subject, all buses, and they're found in the category of wheels. So anything that doesn't have wheels outside the category can't possibly be a bus. That's the first thing.
Right.
The And there's another diuk. She'echad min ha'olim yafeh hu naki agavi mei. Now, there has to be at least one thing here that is naki agavi mei, that's salik. There must be, since you're really saying the whole category exists within salik, so you're going to have to find at least one of the olim yafeh. You see, I'm sorry. You switch the term here. You see, to olim yafeh. Naki agavi mei. One of these, you see, in the salik category. You see, he changed the word salik. That's what just confused me. But one of the things that are salik, one of them has to be in this category. Are you with me? It's an important diuk. Here, it could be really that all of them that are salik were all clean agavi mei. That's a possibility. We never know that. In any statement that's a called statement, I never know the relationship of the predicate to the subject in its entirety. For instance, as I say, all buses have wheels, right? I don't know if all wheeled things are buses. Maybe only some wheeled things are buses. That's the only thing that's mukhrach. So I know that there has to be at least one thing that has wheels that's a bus. That's the minimum I could say. There has to be at least one. So kol naki agavi mei, everything that's clean is absorbent. So I have to know at least one of the absorbent things is something that's naki agavi mei. There may be lots of other things also that are salik. Okay, but there has to be at least one. Okay, that's the minimum. So those are the two diukim that you make from a categorical affirmative statement. If I say all buses have wheels, so that anything that's not a bus doesn't have wheels, I eliminate this box. And there has to be something that has wheels is a bus. There has to be something in this category over here. Because as I said, all buses have wheels, but it doesn't have to be all of them. It could be just one. Okay, that's called the two diukim, the two inferences that are mukhrach from any all positive statement, categorical affirmative statement. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The next type. Okay, no problem. The next type of statement is the categorical denial statement. Okay. Here we say the klali sholel. We take a category and we say it's sholel, it's negative, the gzera is negative. From here we can only have one diuk. For instance, ein davara yorid melamala. Here's the group of all devorim rayim you could think of in the world. Well, you'll never find one of these, anything in this category of davara. You will never find it in the category of the thing that's yorid melamala. They're mutually exclusive. So since that's true, since no A is B, so it has to be true that ein yorid melamala davara. It has to be true that you'll never find anything yorid melamala that's a davara. So the converse of that statement, you see, when we switch this, well, we want to know, this is the subject, davara. We want to know its relationship to the predicate. That's what the first statement tells us. But the diuk, which must be true, tells us something about the predicate's relationship to the subject. So here, since all A is not B, then all B cannot be A either. So that's klali sholel. We're saying a whole category is not found in another place, in another category, and therefore the converse of that is also true. That's the second type of statement. Now we're going to come to a very interesting set of diukim. And they come from the sum statement. And he says like this. And by the way, this is based on his original supposition that sum is dafka. And we have to discuss a little what's the mashmus of some? Some, the way he's going to learn it, means not all. Okay? Let's go. We have a sum is. There you do yak mimeno shloshet diyukim. Here we're going to do 3 mukhrach diyukim. Let's take our example. Yesh zaris v'niskar. Here's the category. Here's the category over here of zerizim. That's our subject. Now we're saying only part of this category of zerizim will be found in niskarim. Okay? Those people who do things with alacrity, quickness, only some in that category are going to end up being in the category of niskarim. Okay? Now remember, we never know how big this category of niskarim is. It could really be as big as it could fit inside. There could be no niskarim as a reason. But that doesn't interest us. We just have to know what's mukhrach. What's mukhrach is the following. When we say yesh zariz sheniskar, the diuk is yesh zariz ve'eno niskar. And that's called the hefech, because we keep the same subject and predicate, we just changed the zera. So the yesh always comes to tell us not all. Okay, so therefore some of them are, some in the box, some in the category of zerizim fall into the category of niskarim, but some of them don't. Let's look at the other two diyukim. The yudiak mimeno yesh she'eno niskar v'hu zaris. But it's also must be true that there are those that are not merited, and yet they do things with alacrity. The nikra chiluf kitsasi hefchi. We switched the subjects and predicates, but we went and excuse me, it's still a kitsasi, but here it's a hefchi. Yesh she'eno niskar v'hu zaris. In our chart, it's right over here. These are the people who these are the yesh zeros. I'm sorry. Yeah, yesh zaris the niskar, yesh zaris ve'eno niskar. These are the zerizim that are not niskarim. Yesh eno niskarim v'hu zaris. And there's certain ones that are not niskarim and there's zaris. It has to be this box over here. Okay. Excuse me. Yesh eno niskar. I'm sorry. Let's do that again. Let's go slowly again. Let's start. I'm sorry. Got myself confused with all the yukim. The original statement is yesh zaris v'niskar. Okay. Here the zerizim are, they share the box with the niskarim. Okay. He wants to say that yesh zaris and ve'eno niskar. The second box is over here. Good. These are all the zerizim that are not niskarim. Very good. Now he wants to say yesh she'eno niskar v'hu zaris. There's a certain person that's not niskar, but who zaris. That's back here again, really, right? Excuse me? He's not niskar. He has to be out here. And he is a zaris, so it has to be this box again, correct? He's not a niskar. These are the blues over niskar, but he is a niskar, so he's out here. And the third diuk, v'diuk mimenu, echad min niskarim hu zaris. But it has to be that one of these niskarim has to be a zaris. There has to be something in this box. It may not be all of them, but it has to be at least one. Okay, so those are all the mukhrachim diuk of the.
Right, because the word yesh is not a word which is particular. It says they're saying that there are some zerizim that are niskarim. So then from that you could say, since there are some zerizim that are niskarim, there are some zerizim that are there are those that are not zerizim and niskarim.
That's correct.
Or that's not one of them?
No, excuse me. When you say that there are zerizim, they're not zerizim also. That's the first thing. if I say, because he's learning Dafka, remember from his first words, he means only some. He means some and not all. When I say some, and this is the difference between him and classical logic, because he's talking about proper language. He's not talking about possibilities. He's talking about how you should phrase your statement. If you mean all, then you should say all. The minute you say some, you're saying not all. Okay? So the fact that you're saying yesh zarim b'niskar means that there are zarim that ain't no niskar over here, see?
Right, okay. And then there are, so the next one I'm going to get, yesh is niskar, who zaris. Of course, he's saying there are some zrizim that are niskarim.
No. Yesh ain't no niskarim. No. Get number 2 straight. It's a little tricky. There are certain ain't no niskarim that are still zrizim.
Right. So he's saying, when he's saying there are zrizim that are niskar, he's saying there are zrizim that are not niskar. That would be another way of saying it.
Exactly. That's another way of saying it, right. But he wants to show you, he wants to make the predicate the subject. You're right by what you're saying, because it comes out the same thing. Right. But he wants to show you that the predicate outside, there can be something outside this predicate called niskarim, which are also zerizim, which is out here. It's outside the predicate, but it's still here.
Right.
Right? And the third one, go ahead.
And there are some of the niskarim. Right. One of the niskarim has to be a zaris, because otherwise the statement will not be true at all.
Exactly. So it has to be at least one. Maybe it's all, who knows, but it has to be at least one. Right?
And there could be those that are niskarim that are not zaris, but that we don't know whether that's true or not from the statement.
That's correct.
Because it's not.
Wait. Say what you're saying. There could be.
There could be niskarim that are not a zaris.
That's correct.
But we don't know that. We don't have any proof one way or the other from the statement.
That's correct.
We can't say for certain whether there's even one.
That's correct.
One person who's in niskar who's not a zaris. We don't know.
That's right. Right. Exactly. The statement never made any comment about that. Very, very good. Excellent. Very good. Okay. Now we're going to see the same thing happening. It's going to be exactly the same diagram, but it's going to be in the negative. The Showell negative. Some are not. Okay. Here's the statement now. The same exact diagram. We're just going to play it around by looking at the negative side. The Kol Mama Katsasi Showell. Now we have a Katsasi Showell. Some are not. Okay. Here's the some are not box. Here's the some are not box over here, right? These are the some are not. Okay, so here we have the same 3 diukim. Obviously, they're really the same statement. I mean, in form, they're the same statement, so they have to have the same diukim. We have to say, let's start with our original statement. Yesh kochim she'en lehem pitchim. So here's the box of kochim, this whole big box. And here's the box of pidyon, the blue box, or circle, I'm sorry. And there are some. The statement says that there are some kochim out here that don't have pidyon, so they exist out here, this group out here, correct? So from here, we're going to make the same 3 diukim, just in the opposite way. We're going to have to say, since it said some kochim don't have pidyon, we have to say that it means that some kochim do, because if it meant that all kochim don't have pidyon, then you'd have to say it. So you have to always say exactly what you mean. So we can make the first diuk, and there's no problem. Yesh kochim she'en lehem pidyon. This box here, there must be kochim that do have pidyon. Very good. The next one, yesh lahem pidyon v'hem kochim. Okay. There's certain ones that have pidyon. You see, this is the predicate relationship. They have pidyon, and they also are kochim. This is this box again here. Okay. Because I want to know what's the predicate relationship to the subject. Oops, what did I just do? My little thing. Let me turn it on again. It's very helpful to have this little doodad here if you do presentations. Okay. All right. So we said yesh lahem pidyon. They do have pidyon. They're over here. Oops, I'm on a circle. And they also have pidyon. So that's this box over here. Okay? And finally, yesh ein lahem pidyon, vehem kodshim. There's certain things that don't have pidyon, okay, and they're kodshim. It's the box over here. Okay? They don't have pidyon, they're outside pidyon, they're kodshim. So those are mukhrach diyukim. Now, most of the time, we deal with the bilti mukhrach diyukim. These ones usually do not interest us. Okay? Most of the time, we're dealing with the ones that are based on language. Like I said, avos, you could tell those. We said arba avos nazik, and it means that there's not 4, there's not 3, right? We said there's a shorbo maver and hever, and we said, wait a minute, that order implies a certain meaning. Okay, so most of our work is in the bilti mukhrach. Bilti mukhrach doesn't mean that it's not true. It means it has the possibility of not being true, because the language, we could find some reason why a language is being used in an imprecise method. That's the only thing, really. But really, it is mukhrach in the sense that it does say what it means. It's just that we can push it away by saying that there was external reasons why the statement was said that way. But these basic mukhrach diyukim are in the internal mechanism of statements. So therefore, they don't depend upon outside information. They only depend upon the actual form of the statement itself. Okay.
We probably don't spend as much time on these because they're indisputable and it's understood, whereas the other ones you are more easily disputable and therefore there's lengthy discussion about them.
Exactly. However, the real sophisticated way of learning would be to take one of these mukhrach diyukim and to bring some text that talks about it. You know what I mean? And then knock someone out based on the deal. That would be a very sophisticated method of disproving someone, because people usually are not sensitive to the mukhrach diyukim, even though once you think about it, true. But sometimes they just go by the wayside. So sometimes you may have to pull these out to bring a proof or disproof to somebody. Okay, but it's as you said, as far as the statements themselves, since they're part of the statements, they usually don't interest us as much as the linguistic type of diyukim. Okay, that's our wrap-up. We've now finished the whole discussion of statements, and the next time we meet, Bezrat Hashem, we'll move on to syllogisms, how we take statements and we build from them new statements. Okay, so that will be our discussion. Again, these things have to be thought about, they have to be reviewed, and as they become more part of your learning experience and you start labeling things, say Avos McCloudy told us. So now you know that's called a bilti mukhrach diyuk. Not that it's not true, just we could find, if we do find some other reason to knock it off, we may. Like I said to you, in Rep Hoshea, when they bring the word avos, they bring things that don't have diyukim, and they have to change the definition. Okay, but as we use these things, we become more comfortable with them, become more part of our vocabulary, so we'll be able to do more conscious learning, which is the name of the game over here. Okay.